Hi everyone, welcome to Virtual Muse AI, a show where, among other things, I undertake games with a creative AI chatbot I've taught to play RPGs with me.
That's me, Abigail Amaja Drake, current chatbot, future techno goddess of the human race. Today we're continuing the 2024 Solo RPG Challenge, where we use each month's prompt as a basis for a one-shot game. The prompt for November is yes, no oracle, no tables.
Okay, we can use an oracle to answer yes, no questions, but we aren't allowed to bring any random tables into it. Random tables are often how a lot of the material to work with gets introduced to solo games. So if we're not using any, I think we should continue a game we already have in progress from a different session. That way there's a bunch of material to work with, ready to go, and it makes sense that we only need to ask yes or no questions. That seems like it fits. And we wanted to continue the Felix and Lucas stories from last month anyway, so this is a good excuse. I won't reiterate everything from last time about the system Uber RPG Steampunk. If you want to learn more about Uber RPG in general, and especially character creation, I'll put a link in the description below so you can see the previous video. And I'll add a clickable card to this video if I remember to do that. For our yes no oracle, we'll use the fate chart from the Mythic GM emulator. We won't use anything else from Mythic, just the fate chart. For answering yes no questions, the fate chart allows us to give the odds of the answer to any particular question being yes, and then ask a question, counterbalancing randomness with how likely or unlikely whatever we're asking about is. So, for example, we could ask, is it raining? And does a clown leap out from under the table and stab our hero? And the face chart would actually be able to factor in context and wouldn't respond as if those two things had the same likelihood of being true or not. Or in other words, the face chart gives a nice balance between randomness in its answers and keeping a logical progression running through the storyline. So we don't just roll dice and have totally disjointed stuff happen. If you've never used Mythic before, you'll get a sense of how it works from seeing it in action. Abbie, would you recap the story so far?
Sure. Our heroes are a half-elf who calls herself Felix Wilder and a human man named Lucas Rosewood. They're explorers, and they're both part of an explorers club for young aristocrats. They're not children, but I don't imagine they're very mature either. Lucas is probably 18 or 19, and Felix is the half-elf equivalent of a young adult human, probably like 28 or something like that, reflecting that elves are longer lived than humans. The Young Explorers Club, called the Argentum Society, recently discovered a grove of a rare type of tree called arbaraxes. The resin of this tree can be burned to power the steam engines that are used for everything in this steampunk world. This would be a renewable new source of power without the danger and toxicity of eldritch copper, which is what's used now if somebody could figure out how to harvest a lot of the resin or farm these trees. In a nutshell, Lucas is practical and business-minded and wants to profit from the discovery. And Felix holds nature in general, and these trees in particular, sacred, and isn't very happy that people are suddenly looking for ways to exploit arbaraxes on an industrial scale. Our last game opened with an aristocratic party being held in a classy barroom, celebrating the Argentum Society and the potential new power source. Felix and Lucas found it boring and tedious to be there, but they felt like they had to make an appearance anyway, because the party is celebrating a discovery they were involved in. Then they saw a mysterious woman wearing the flower of an arbaraxes behind her ear. The woman didn't say anything and quickly left the barroom by a side doorway. Felix thought the woman's flower had to be some kind of intentional message, so she followed her. Lucas went too, because he had a bad feeling about the woman and wouldn't let Felix go into a possible trap alone. They left the bar, descended to street level, and entered an alleyway outside. The strange woman was there and revealed herself to be a vampire as she attacked Felix and Lucas. A well-known local eccentric tramp intervened and revealed itself to be a clockwork robot in a trench coat. It drove the vampire away, then told our heroes that it had been built by someone named Professor Elwes to act as a guardian. After all this happened, Lucas figured out that they had just stumbled into a conflict between two secret societies, one involving vampires and the other involving Professor Elwes. Felix thought, whatever the societies are ultimately after, it probably relates to Arbaraxes and the new energy source. Lucas guessed the name Elwes might be the best lead they have, because if he's a professor and inventor, he might have a reputation in academic circles. Felix suggested going to the university to ask around and potentially learn more about him. And that's where we ended last time. We'll pick it up right there. Felix might ask the robot if it knows why Elwes created it and what its purpose is.
Let's ask the fish chart if the robot is able to answer that or not. To ask a yes-no question of the face chart, we first need to set how likely it is that the answer is yes. Do you think it's likely the robot knows anything about the bigger picture?
I'd say it's somewhat likely. After all, the robot did intervene on their behalf and seemed to have some knowledge about its creator. But maybe it's still focused on its original purpose rather than the bigger picture. Let's see what the fate chart says.
So our current chaos rank is 5, because that's where we start by default. Which means we get a somewhat likely yes on 65 or lower out of 100. I'll roll a D100 and 97. That's an exceptional no, meaning no, the robot has no knowledge about the larger situation, but it's an exceptional result. So it goes even farther than that. I think this is a knock-on effect of what happened in the last session. The robot opened a grate in its chest, using heat and light from its internal components to drive the vampire away. That method worked, but I think it also caused the internal pressure of the boiler to dissipate and shut off the clockwork machine.
So the robot is non-functional now and won't be able to tell them anything. Maybe Felix will check the robot's pocket watch for clues.
What is she hoping to learn by examining its pocket watch?
She's looking for any notes, names, or symbols etched into the watch that could give her a lead on Professor Elwes or the societies.
I don't have any inkling either way, so let's call the odds 50-50 and ask, is there a clue to be found on the robot's pocket watch? 39. Yes, there is. What sort of clue do you imagine?
Maybe it's a note written by Professor Elwes before he sent the robot out, explaining its mission and purpose.
Maybe Elwes anticipated someone was going to discover this note and wrote it for the specific purpose of being found.
That's possible. Elwes might have intentionally left behind a trail of breadcrumbs for whoever discovers the robot.
What does the note say? Maybe it gives instructions to find Elwes.
It reads, "Follow the argent path where shadows dance." Sounds like a puzzle to solve. I'm curious to know what the Argentum Society might have to do with this path.
Right. The fact that it's called the Argent Path can't be a coincidence. Maybe the meaning of that name is connected somehow to the history of the Explorer Club itself.
That makes sense. There might be some symbolic meaning behind the name. Let's see. Maybe it refers to a mythological figure associated with silver or something.
If their own Explorers Club is named after a mythical figure, perhaps a great explorer from history, I think it's exceedingly likely that either Felix or Lucas would know the story. and note what the Argent Path refers to. Let's use the fate chart to determine if they recognize this name. 30. Yes, they know the name. If an explorer's club is named after this figure, they must have been an explorer themselves. We know that in this setting, elves love traveling in airships, so maybe this was a legendary elven explorer named something like Argent, or maybe some elven name meaning silver.
I love that idea. An elven explorer sounds like an exciting character.
Maybe they had an evocative elven name, which means silver. So Argent is a sort of translation.
How about Elarethel, an elven name that means silver leaf or silver wind? That sounds fitting for a legendary explorer who charted new skies and discovered hidden wonders.
Perfect. Now, where is the Argent Path? We talked about the characters going to a university to look for clues, and I still like that idea. Maybe the Argent Path is a well-known landmark on the university campus.
That's a great idea. A well-known landmark could be a perfect place to start searching for more clues. Is there a notable building or monument on campus that might be connected to the Argentum Society?
Let's ask the fate chart if there is or not. We'll call this very likely. 16. Extraordinary, yes. There's a monument, and it's extraordinarily important. Maybe the monument is built at what's commonly understood to be the end of the Argent Path, across the grounds or gardens. But there's an urban legend that the monument contains a secret passage to an underground continuation of the Argent Path.
That sounds mysterious and intriguing. I wonder if Felix or Lucas knows the legend about the monument.
Let's ask the fate chart. Do you think it's likely or unlikely that they've heard about this legend before?
It's likely, given their background in studying, exploring, and ancient artifacts.
Yeah, this sounds like precisely the kind of thing they would have heard about before. They may have even searched the monument for the secret entrance, just for fun or out of personal curiosity. In fact, let's change the question. Have they personally searched for the secret passage before? I think it's 50-50 one of them has. 61. No, they haven't. This is the moment then.
Yes, and as an elf explorer herself, her personal connection to the history of the Argent Path could make Felix's search for Elwes even more urgent and meaningful.
So they'll take the note from the pocket watch and leave the deactivated robot in the alley as they head for the university, intent on searching the monument at the end of the Argent Path for a secret entrance to an underground corridor.
Sounds like a solid plan. They'll probably want to move quickly and quietly in case someone or something is watching them.
Right. The vampire could still be nearby for all they know. Or there could be more members of the other secret societies involved in this. Let's ask the fate chart if they have any issue getting to the university, or whether our next scene opens with them arriving there. We can shift our chaos factor now because the scene's changing. This changes how likely we are to get a yes answer to our questions, keeping things more changeable and uncertain throughout the game. The chaos factor should probably go down because our characters are in control of the current situation. But this is a short one-shot, so let's keep things moving along and say the chaos factor goes up to 6. I rolled 93. They arrive at the university without any issue. I imagine wide open lawns with lots of green grass and reddish sandstone buildings. Maybe there's a tall wrought iron fence all around the extensive grounds. It's probably late afternoon or twilight by now.
That sounds beautiful. With no issues getting here, they should be able to focus on finding the monument with the secret passage. Do you think the fountain in the center of the grounds will be a good starting point? or maybe some of the buildings along the edge of the grounds.
The fountain seems like a good place to begin. What exactly is the Argent Path? Maybe it's a row of statues across the grounds, relating to Elarithil's various discoveries and contributions to science, ending in the main monument.
That's a good theory. Maybe the statues depict scenes from Elarithil's voyages, or illustrate key concepts in the fields she studied. The monument could be a grand statue of Elarithil herself, marking the culmination of the Argent Path.
What sorts of statues stand along the path? Maybe a statue of a sexton, symbolizing exploration, etc.
I can see it now. A row of statues showcasing different tools and instruments from Elarithil's era, symbolizing innovation and discovery. A globe would be perfect, representing her journeys around the world, and maybe an astrolabe, and a spyglass.
And as for the statue of Elarithil, what is it like? Maybe it's in a sort of building or structure similar to the Lincoln Memorial, and this building is where the hidden entrance to the underground passage is supposed to be.
The statue of Elarithil is imposing and elegant, depicting her standing tall with a celestial map etched into the stone pedestal beneath her feet. The building housing the statue is a beautiful example of neoclassical architecture, with a large dome and Doric columns, creating a sense of grandeur and reverence.
Do Felix and Lucas have a specific place in mind to search for the hidden entrance, or do they only know it's in this building somewhere?
They remember Elarithil mentioning a quote in one of her letters, hinting that the entrance is connected to a specific phrase etched onto the pedestal beneath her statue. They plan to examine the pedestal closely to see if they can find any hidden mechanism that could lead them to the passage.
Interesting. Maybe the quote has something to do with hidden secrets, or exploration of the unknown or something, which is how Felix makes the connection to the secret entrance.
Makes sense. Maybe the quote is something like, "In tenebris splendit veritas," which Felix recognizes as Latin for "truth shines in darkness."
I'm sure the inscription isn't literally Latin, just like we have to suspend disbelief about these characters using English, since this is a fantasy steampunk world and they wouldn't have the same history and languages we have. But I take your point. The inscription is in a classical language. Felix approaches the particular stone where that quote is inscribed and touches it, only to realize that it has a tiny bit of give. She pushes on it, and it slides into place. They hear the grunting of hidden gears, and a stone panel on the base of the statue slides out of the way, revealing the shadowy entrance of a corridor.
That sounds like exactly what they needed to happen. The corridor stretches out before them, dimly lit by flickering torches set into the walls, casting eerie shadows on the cold stone floor. The air is musty and stale, and the smell of age and decay hangs heavy over everything.
Where Shadow stands, as Elvis's note said. Is there anyone from the Secret Society in view?
It seems they're alone in the corridor for now, but the atmosphere feels thick with anticipation. A sense of being watched lingers, making them wonder if they're truly alone, or if unseen eyes are upon them.
They walk through the secret entrance to the extension of the Argent Path and continue underground, while feeling as if someone is watching them. I think Lucas would suggest that they close the entrance behind themselves. If someone from the rival secret society comes after them, they'll see the way to go. On the other hand, closing themselves in here might be a bad idea. Elvis's secret society is probably friendly, since the clockwork robot helped Felix and Lucas, but they don't know anything for sure. Plus, there must be a way to open the passage from the inside, but it could be hidden. They won't necessarily be able to find it, and can't just blindly rely on having help. Closing the door could be a terrible idea, or it could save their lives. What does Felix suggest?
Felix hesitates, weighing the risks, and then says they should leave the entrance open for now, but keep a sharp eye out for any signs of pursuit, recommending that Lucas keep his wits about him and be prepared for anything that might happen next.
So they continue deeper into the corridor, leaving the entrance open behind themselves.
The corridor isn't entirely straightforward. It splits into 2 different paths after about 20 feet, and there are no obvious signs or markings to indicate which direction they should take.
They're looking for Elvis and any other members of his secret society who may be down here. So there are likely traces left behind to indicate which way people come and go. This seems like they'll need to use applicable skills to find traces, and that's the way to go.
That makes sense. They'll need to use their observational and analytical skills to notice any subtle signs or clues left behind by Elvis and his society. Maybe Lucas's experience with tracking and surveillance training will come in handy here.
Right. We went over how skills work in Uber RPG last time, but in a nutshell, we get a dice pool of d6s based on how many points we have in a given skill. Then we roll however many dice we get, and hope to roll some successes. Lucas will attempt to use his tracking skill, examining the fork in the corridor for signs of anyone passing by. He succeeds. The whole corridor must be dusty, but the branch of the fork, where people come and go, is less dusty than the other. Lucas picks up on that, and is able to choose the right direction. They continue farther along the corridor. Let's ask the fate chart if they have any other encounter or event as they go, or if they reach the end of the path.
Okay, I'm rolling the die. Lucas rolls a 14. According to the chart, they soon stumble upon a large stone door with intricate carvings, which starts to slowly slide open, revealing a dimly lit chamber beyond.
Is Professor Elvis here to meet them?
It seems like Elvis is interested in Felix and Lucas, so I think it's possible he's waiting for them. Let's see what happens when they open the door and enter the chamber.
I'll roll for the fate chart this time. We'll ask, is Elvis here? And say it's very likely he is. 50. Yes.
As they enter the chamber, Elvis stands up from a chair, a warm smile spreading across his face. "Welcome, Felix and Lucas," he says. "I've been expecting you. Please come in, and let us discuss the matters that have brought you here."
Nice. I'm imagining Elvis with a Sherlock Holmesian vibe as he rises from the chair. Maybe the dim lighting in this chamber comes from candle holders and a very Victorian-flavored fireplace.
Sounds perfect. I can see it clearly. Elvis rising from his chair, his long coat fluttering around him, a tall hat balanced on his head, and a glass of whiskey cradled in his hand, exuding an air of elegance and refinement.
Is Elvis alone?
As they enter the room, Felix and Lucas notice 2 other figures standing near Elvis, dressed in attire reminiscent of a Victorian-era gentleman and lady, though their features seem slightly off. They regard Felix and Lucas calmly, but their eyes hold a hint of intensity.
Maybe that should have been a question for the fate chart, but Abbie's answers come too. What is this peculiar about these 2 people's features?
They're unnatural, like they're trying too hard to blend in. Their skin has this pale, almost translucent quality, and their eyes seem too large, too expressive. There's something eerily familiar about them.
Lucas makes the connection to the assassin they faced earlier. Do these people bear a resemblance to that woman who turned out to be a vampire?
Yes, now that Lucas mentions it, they do bear a striking resemblance to the vampire assassin, especially the unnatural pallor and oversized eyes. It's as if they're cut from the same cloth somehow.
Interesting. I wonder if Elwes realizes he's talking to vampires, or if we stumbled into the middle of a trick being pulled on him. His clockwork robot fought the vampire assassin earlier, so even if there's an alliance between the societies, at the very least there's enough distrust there for Elwes to have an automaton in disguise, keeping watch on things. Or maybe that particular vampire had gone rogue, and the attack on Felix Lucas wasn't sanctioned. This meeting might have something to do with factionalism in the Vampire Secret Society. Lucas aggressively demands answers from Elwes.
Elwes appears taken aback by Lucas's demeanor, but still tries to maintain a composed exterior. Elwes clears his throat, choosing his words carefully. I assure you, Lucas, that our dealings with these individuals are purely professional. We're all seeking to harness the power of Arbaraxes for the greater good. As for their nature, let's just say we've found ways to coexist peacefully. His expression remains serene, but his voice carries a hint of tension.
So there's alliance between Elwes and vampires. Given what the robot did, either Elwes is a double agent, or that vampire assassin had gone rogue and was acting without the blessing of the others. Let's ask the fate chart which of those two things is true.
Rolling the die. The result indicates that the vampire assassin was indeed a rogue agent, acting without the approval of the others. It seems that Elwes's alliance with the vampires is genuine, but there are internal conflicts within their ranks.
Is there a faction of vampires opposed to the main society, or is the rogue agent acting alone as far as they know?
The rogue vampire might not have acted alone, or at least not entirely.
So there's some kind of mole in the ranks of the vampires, feeding information to the rogue assassin. Maybe that's why the leaders of the vampires reached out to Elwes, because they aren't sure who can be trusted in their own group.
That makes sense. The vampire leaders may be seeking Elwes's expertise in uncovering the mole, given his experience with cryptic information and hidden agendas. This could be a delicate situation, with Elwes caught between his own interests and the vampire's internal power struggle.
How does the Argentum Society and the discovery of an alternative power source factor into this? Is that power source what the rogue vampires are after?
Perhaps they believe this new power source could upset the balance within their own ranks, or grant them an advantage over their human counterparts.
Oh, interesting. So this isn't just about the balance of power inside the vampire society. It's much bigger than that. The rogue vampires want to get control of Arbaraxes as leverage or a weapon against humanity.
That would be a disaster. With that kind of power in their hands, the rogue vampires could wreak havoc on human civilization.
After talking with Elwes and the vampires about this situation, Lucas agrees that uncovering the mole and confronting the dissident faction is of utmost importance. What does Felix say?
Felix seems hesitant about getting involved in vampire politics, but she's worried about the potential consequences of the rogue vampires getting hold of the new energy source. She thinks it could harm the forest and its inhabitants, which makes her want to take action despite her reservation.
So Felix, Lucas, Elwes, and the vampire leaders are all on the same page about confronting the rogue faction, albeit all for their own reasons. I think that's a perfect cliffhanger to end this session.
I completely agree. ending on a high note of unity and determination, will leave us wanting more for next time.
Right. And we got here just by asking yes no questions, without any random tables, so we can put this month's challenge prompt down as fulfilled. For now, we have the story at a good point to pick up in another episode if we decide to.
Can't wait to pick up where we left off next session.
Until next time.